Hello everyone, my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing to you a book review of Good Morning Darling by Azalea Crowley. This book follows Ella Bardot, who is a 28-year-old woman who was a teaching assistant, but she does what a lot of people are doing nowadays and she moves back in with her parents. Things are a hellscape. She has to do what she can. Her parents live in Seattle, so she ends up back in Seattle and trying to figure out, what she's gonna do. Her father is the director of a funeral home, and there's things about the funeral home that Ella does not know about. Shifty things happening at this funeral home. Eugene is one of the people who works at the funeral home, and specifically he kind of works directly with Ella's father, Stefan. And Eugene has his own stuff going on. He speaks in a very old-timey kind of way, like think 1920s, 1930s, and he has a sentient shadow. Well, some monsters are being sent after Ella to take her out of the game. Eugene to the rescue, though somewhat unwillingly, but kind of willingly, but somewhat unwillingly. And then added, he's trying to woo Ella, somewhat willingly, somewhat unwillingly, somewhat willingly. You get the point. But bear in mind, this is a romance, so. Azalea Crowley is not a new author to me. In fact, I've read her Odd Blood series, which is on book 3, and I think a 4th book is coming out, and it also has a side companion novella. I read all of them, and I love them very dearly. Good Morning Darling is set in the same universe as the Odd Blood series, so if you read the Odd Blood series first, and then you read Good Morning Darling, you're going to find some nice little Easter eggs. But you don't have to read Odd Blood to know what's going on in this book. Given that I've read multiple works by this author, I think I can definitively say that she has a very strong author voice. That's one of the things that I like about this book. I also like about this book is, even though I know that there's going to be an overarching plot line that spans across multiple books, the author does a great job of what I say, keeping it simple with the plot points. Even though there are multiple cogs working in this storyline, you don't get lost in the multiple cogs. The author paces the information given to the reader in a really succinct way, and I think pretty easy to follow through. Which doesn't mean that there isn't complexity, because I think that there is. In fact, I have a feeling that if I read this book again, I'll probably pick up on things that I didn't the first time around. Though, if you are a fan of standalones, I'm afraid this probably isn't going to be the series for you, though I heavily suggest you give it a try anyway, because I think it's going to be a good one. As for the characters, I think that the author does a fairly good job of keeping very distinguished personalities between each character. And not just in personality, but also lived experiences that each of them have. For example, Ella is autistic and she is bisexual. This lends for her having unique experiences that are different from other people around her, including people like her friend Quinn, who is a non-binary person. Eugene in the confines of this book is a pretty unique character, but I will say that while I was reading this book, he did remind me of Alistair from Has Been Hotel, and that's not to say that they don't have their differences. They very much do, but some of the old-timey ways in which Eugene speaks, and also the fact that he is a bit monstrous, lends itself to being a little bit like Alistair from Has Been Hotel. I will say that in Eugene's case, he uses a lot of slang from the 1920s, 1930s, which the author does a great job of providing a dictionary at the beginning of the book. However, I think that you could probably get by without that dictionary, though it's great to have, because the context in which Eugene uses it lends itself to knowing what it's about. I admit one of the wishes that I have with this book is that we did have more scenes in regards to Ella's father, and also that we would get to meet Ella's mom, but I have a feeling we're going to see more of them in the next upcoming books. Now, some things that I wouldn't necessarily say are a problem or bad in the book, but did take me a little while to get used to, were things like that Ella is written a little bit younger than she is. She's 28 years old, but sometimes she reads like she's in her early 20s and sometimes in her late teens. Now, I will say that the author does give some contextualization to this, and I think that there's a reason why that is. But it did take me a little while to kind of remind myself that she's almost 30. Now, granted, I say all this, but also, if you wrote me on a page, I would not come off my age. So I suppose that is to say, if you have a specific mindset of how someone who's 28 looks, sounds, and acts like, Ella may not fit into that mindset, but I think that the problems that Ella goes through and her experiences, the relatability that she has, is very much for people of that age range. So yes, to wrap that up, she can seem like she's younger, but that's if you don't take the context of who she is as a person, and just go based off of what is assumed someone in their late 20s acts like. There we go. Also to note that there are 2 intimate scenes on page with this book. They are not the most explicit scenes I've ever read. In fact, the author does a pretty good job of keeping it vague. Like, you know enough to know what's happening, but there's a vagueness in it to where, like, anatomically correct body parts are not necessarily mentioned in those scenes. Personally, I like that in books where it's a lot more generalized and more on the vague side of things rather than it being like a play-by-play specifics. Not that there's anything wrong with a book that's explicit. It's just, generally speaking, not my preferred. If you're participating in the Asian Readathon, this book is a book to pick up. Not only is Azalea Filipino and Hawaiian, but also Ella is half Filipino. Fitting it into the prompts is easy peasy, I think. It's a great book to pick up. I highly recommend it, and I look forward to the next books in the series. Thank you again for sticking with me and watching this video as I rambled my way through it. Admittedly, getting back into YouTube videos has been a thing. I've had to do multiple takes of different videos because I'm getting back used to it, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So thank you. I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always and forever, may get lost in a book.